So it's 2020 and you're thinking about worst case scenarios. For some reason. At the bunker, we're here for you. And today we're counting down the worst places in America to shelter when society collapses. You know, more. So here it is. Our 10 worst places in the U.S. when the poop hits the fan blades and Madison, Wisconsin suddenly becomes downtown Chicago. Number 10. Downtown Chicago. For those of you wanting to ride out our dystopian future, you'll need to answer a few questions. Question number 1. Am I living in an active war zone? If your hometown has ever seriously considered UN peacekeepers, you have a problem that's not going to get any better when the electricity turns off. And what most cities call an extended rash of violence, Chicago calls a sleepy Tuesday. This sort of thing only gets worse when police average response times go from 15 minutes to never.
Ties a noose around your neck and pours bleach on you.
Totally plausible. If you want to get all survival-y, the Windy City also has 6 nuclear power plants upwind from either itself or its water supply. But let's just be honest. This is one urban hotspot where radiation is not your most immediate problem. There's a lesson here about urban populations and how dependent we've all become on our government. That is not how you hold one of those. But we'll leave the lessons for the college professors, as it only gets worse from here, and we move on to question number 2. If not for modern technology, would my hometown even exist? If the answer is no, you live in the American Southwest. If the answer is cackling maniacal laughter, you live in Phoenix. Number 9. Phoenix. Endless track houses and strip malls in the middle of the desert. What could possibly go wrong? Thankfully, there's a never-ending supply of water to keep the whole thing going. If you live in Phoenix and our modern world calls it quits, your next task may be to walk several hundred miles on foot. The good news is that if you obey a few simple rules, such as staying in shade during the heat of the day, and knowing what a barrel cactus looks like, that's the one with drinkable water inside of it, you can make good time. The bad news? Gila monsters. For our number 8, take all the poor municipal planning of Phoenix, add casinos, and what have you got? That's right, you've got Las Vegas. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know what doesn't stay in Vegas in a collapse scenario? Any human population. And that means a motley collection of casino workers, junkies, the elderly, and assorted mafioso types all shambling their way off into the desert. How are those survival skills, Guido? In the history of the world, mankind has come up with just 2 basic strategies for living in the open desert. The first involves camels and lots of walking. The second involves caves. Look around. See any camels? No? That leaves the second thing. The good news is that you now have shelter and maybe some water percolating through the rock fissures. The bad news is that food is scarce and cave living has a negative impact on the complexion. Should have moisturized. Number 7. Washington, D.C. The District of Columbia, with its dense, disenfranchised population, large number of tourists, and minimal infrastructure. Thankfully, it's also the seat of our nation's strong, effective leadership, so problem solved. Unfortunately, it also brings us to question number 3. Do all sorts of nations and terrorist groups want to wipe my city off the face of the earth? Ouch. For number 6, we're going off the beaten path and all the way out onto Indian tribal lands. Sheesh. Some people sure can hold a grudge. It's been, 150 years since that whole Wounded Knee thing? You'd think it was last week. Hey, it's not like they didn't get some prime real estate out of the deal. Oh. Question number 4. Is the local population angry at me? The good news here is that not everyone is living in the past, and these days you're likely to find any number of people who'd be willing to work with you. Some of them might even know a few old tribal tricks for living in the wild. The bad news is that the conflict between settlers and Native Americans back in the Old West days was, at its heart, a clash of cultures. And if this culture were to suddenly call it a day, it's hard to imagine that a certain amount of clashing wouldn't pick right up where it left off. Number 5. Key West, Florida. So far, every location on this list at least has the virtue of an easy escape. No more. From here on out, charting a course to somewhere more livable is part of the fun. Ah, Key West. The eccentric locals, the swarms of tourists, the totally impractical population size for the tiny bits of land and the single 2-lane road that stretches over 100 miles before you make it to the mainland. Go all World War Z, and that little road is the only way off other than stealing a catamaran or swimming. You can't stay, and if any part of that bridge between you and the mainland closes, you can't leave. What a compelling scenario for drama, for action, for spine-tingling survival horror. No, back on task. Number 4, Alaska. Let's just call it the interior, since you can't live in the Arctic zone now, and that just feels like cheating. But guys, you say, there are people living off the grid in Alaska right at this very moment. True, there are. They're called Inuits, and their lifestyle is just amazing. I've heard it's tasty with fresh cracked pepper. Virtually everyone else still has a tether of some sort to the modern world, because Alaska may look nice, but it will absolutely kill you. Sub-zero temperatures, very little food to forage, no growing season, thin ice, thick ice, swarms of mosquitoes. Over 2,000 people die every year in Alaska just by getting lost in the woods. And that's during the summer tourist season. Good luck moving at all during the winter. Not to mention your new neighbors. It's seal stomach in a sourdough bowl. Have some. I can't seem to finish mine for some reason. Sound bad? What could be worse? Number 3, Los Angeles. Drought, fires, deadly smog, earthquakes. Oh, Los Angelinos. It's almost as if the universe is trying to tell you something. Like all American cities of any size, stop trucking in food and it becomes uninhabitable in a matter of days. But Los Angeles has another problem. Location, location, location. I refer you back to question number 5. Go east and you're traversing hundreds of miles of open desert. You could go south, climb the fence into Mexico, see how they like it. Or you could go north. You and about 30 million of your closest friends. Because doesn't everyone try to go to Canada in an apocalypse? Buckle up, Canada. Want to make it even worse? Add bridges. Number 2, Manhattan Island. Manhattan Island has a daytime workday population of nearly 4 million. 4 million people on a tiny little island with just a handful of narrow bridges leading out. It's hard enough to get on and off now. Imagine trying to escape along 4 million other panicked New Yorkers. Basically, just imagine the end of a Knicks game. Get past that somehow and you still have the other boroughs and 8 million more people to get through. That's roughly 3% of the entire country's population, all pressed in together, all suddenly faced with a scenario that probably not 1 in 100 of them have ever seriously considered. Talk about a recipe for chaos. What could be worse than that? What could possibly be a less survivable scenario? Number 1, Aloha. Where's the worst possible place to find yourself in the United States when civilization calls it quits? Paradise. For hundreds of years, explorers stopped at the islands in the Pacific, and some never got back on their boats. Whole crews would simply mutiny, refusing to ever leave. The natural beauty, the climate, the friendly natives, and really, hardly any cannibalism, as long as the population didn't get too large. Visit the Hawaiian Islands now, and most of what you eat, the gas in your car, the petroleum and coal that make the electricity in your hotel room, all of it had to be shipped in from over 2,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. Ever wonder why they serve Spam in their restaurants? It doesn't require refrigeration. You can pack a lot of it into a cargo hold. The closest continent to the islands is North America, 2,400 miles away, making the Hawaiian Islands the most remote island chain on planet Earth, which, if they could get down to a sustainable population, wouldn't make them a half-bad spot to ride out the end of humanity. The problem is getting down to sustainability without becoming someone's main course. This is David Reichert from The Bunker. Hit like and subscribe and click the notification bell, and we'll try and put out at least one video a week. Also, our pandemic horror series, The Holocaust Engine, is available September 14th. Link for pre-order down below.